It's Monday, which means another Mock Draft Monday here on the channel officially moved into the new place, so sorry for no videos over the last week, but this is the second to last mock draft I'm going to post for the 2025 NFL Draft, with the final one being posted on Wednesday, sometime at night. More intel starts to kind of slip out a little bit, you get a better idea of about, where these guys are going. But until then, this is going to be the closest that I can get. I've got some things that I feel pretty good about. I'll explain those as we go, and there are quite a lot of unknowns because, as we've talked about really this entire draft cycle, the player that you're going to find at 10 maybe isn't so different from 32, which is unusual, really unusual for an NFL draft. And I would say there are going to be a lot of starters in this draft, right? But you're missing a lot of that top end, true first round talent. You're going to find, a lot of similarities between the 15th best player and the 60th best player. But without further ado, let's go ahead and pop in. It seems like a foregone conclusion at this point that Cam Ward will be the first player off the board. The Tennessee Titans need a quarterback. Cam Ward plays quarterback. I wish there was more analysis that could go into that. He's got a chance to be a franchise-level guy. There is some arm talent there. He's able to make some big-time plays. He's able to improvise. You're looking for more down-to-down consistency, a little bit less hero ball at times and playing within the structure of the offense. We'll see if those flaws are exploited at the NFL level, or if he can rise above and play his brand of football and still be really, really effective. Is he, in terms of a prospect, one of the weaker number one overall picks we've seen? Yeah, for sure. Kind of reminds me back to that Luke Jokel, Eric Fisher type conversation about who was going to go number one overall that year. But Cam Ward is off the board here. He does have a chance to be a franchise-level guy. You're banking on the upside and the traits. At number 2, it does seem like Travis Hunter will be headed to the Cleveland Browns, likely as a receiver. That's how they view him. He's just, in my opinion, the best player in the draft. It's hard to pass that up at number 2, especially given his flexibility on both sides of the football. It seems like he's really going to be more receiver than corner in the NFL, somebody that can play defense. However, it seems like teams are going to look to maximize his ability on the offensive side of the ball. Could that change depending on who takes him? Yes, but the Browns, as we know, view him as a receiver, and I think the Giants will take Abdul Carter at number 3. Another blue chip player in this class. There are some injury concerns with him, with a shoulder, with an ankle, or a foot that may end up requiring surgery at some point. I kind of think it's going to be one of those situations where it's like he doesn't require surgery, and then he gets drafted, and it's like, all right, he probably should get surgery, and could that impact his overall draft spot? Maybe so. He's not necessarily a lock to go in the top 3, although this is very, very highly expected what's going to happen. Carter's an absolute stud. He's played 1 year off the edge and was a game wrecker in that regard. And I also think he's got the flexibility to play off ball because we've seen him do that, and he's been quite good. He's just taken it up to another level, future number 1 overall pick type of player, even if he's not number 1 here at number 3. Giants could absolutely use an upgrade on the edge long term. Kayvon Thibodeau has not exactly met expectations. It's been disappointing. I was really high on him as a player, as a prospect coming out. Just haven't really seen him put it all together at this point. It's not to say that he's not good enough, but he's certainly upgradable and maybe a potential trade candidate as well. Giants just looking to take the best player available here, and I think that is going to be Abdul Carter. Now, at number 4, this is where things get a little bit interesting. I tweeted out saying, I'm going to get a little bit weird today, and I'm not doing trades for this one. I will be doing trades for the final mock. I think there is a non-zero chance that it ends up being Ashton Jeanty. Now, a lot of the smoke recently has been that he could end up being a Jaguars pick here at number 5. The Jags obviously need help some other places, but they've solidified some things or brought in some talent via free agency. And the Jags potentially not in on Travis Etienne long-term. He wasn't great last year. End of his contract's coming up. So a lot of people have been connecting dots to Jacksonville. But I'm thinking if the Jags would consider it at 5, I could see the Patriots considering it at 4 for the exact same reasons, right? This is not a team that is ready to roll, right? they're a little bit of a ways away. But if you can start to put some of the pieces together on offense and build around Drake May, I know offensive line seems to be the clear. It's got to be something on the offensive line, and it really could be, but Will Campbell is not a blue chip prospect. Armand Membu is not. Like, these are really good players that could be good pros, but Jeanty is the final blue chip prospect remaining. It really is these first three, Hunter, Carter, and Jeanty, maybe in that order. And if the Patriots just say, screw it, we'll just take the best player here. We don't need to necessarily reach a little bit for an offensive lineman when we can grab something down the board. We can't necessarily get Ashton Jeanty down the board. High character guy, super consistent, and obviously just a fantastic player overall. Yes, you can make the argument that there are really good running backs down the board, but you can make the argument that the top offensive linemen available are not going to be significantly better than the top offensive linemen available at the top of round 2. I know the Patriots really should invest in that O-line a little bit more, but I just don't know that the player is there for them at this spot. I don't know that there's one necessarily worth taking. Now, am I going to come back on Wednesday and say, it's going to be Will Campbell or Armand Membu? Yeah, it's a possibility, right? I think the Patriots could trade down. I think Jacksonville could trade down. I think there are a lot of teams that could consider, moving, because teams are going to want Jeanty. Again, in a class with maybe 3 true blue chip players, teams might be looking to move up. But for that same reason, teams are really not going to be looking to trade down. As we get to the Jags at number 5, there's been a lot of variance about this guy's draft spot in the past couple of weeks, months, things like that. But I think the right team is picking for the player. I'm still really high on Teteroa McMillan. Yes, there have been a lot of conversations that maybe he's not going to be the best or first receiver off the board in this class. I get that, right? But at the end of the day, I do think he's the best receiver in this class. Liam Cohen coming into Jacksonville from Tampa Bay. Not to say that Teteroa McMillan is Mike Evans, but it is a big-bodied X-style receiver. And McMillan is slot versatile as well. He's somebody that can thrive in a number of different spots across the formation. So I just think that in a spot here where, maybe it's not Mason Graham, because I've done that so much. Maybe it's Ashton Jeanty if he gets there, but if Jeanty's off the board, McMillan could be a really great addition to this offense. I love Brian Thomas Jr., right? He's the field stretcher, and he's a tremendous player, but McMillan can win in a lot of ways that are different to Brian Thomas Jr. Thomas Jr., again, can stretch the field with elite speed, big over-the-top, big play potential, and can also, if you watch him at LSU, it was 2 things. It was streaks down the field, go routes, and then comebacks and in curls. So I think that if you can space the field out, you can get, maybe Parker Washington eating in the slot. I know they bring in Diami Brown, another field stretcher, kind of in my opinion. And obviously you've got some things there, and I know they made some cuts. I'm not in love with Gabe Davis, of course, but I think McMillan long-term could be a really, really good pick here for Jacksonville if they don't want to go the Mason Graham route in a really stacked interior defensive line class. It's a thought. Raiders at 6 end up being in a little bit of an interesting spot because Jeanty's off the board, McMillan's off the board. It makes me think they'd go something on either side of the line. I know it's not listed in their PFF team needs here, but I think the Raiders absolutely could consider an offensive lineman here in Will Campbell or Armand Membu. Either a tackle of the future in waiting or something that can, fill up a need at guard right away. Because I think Membu and Campbell both have that guard flexibility with their size, especially, Membu at 6'4", but has 33-inch arms. Campbell, a little bit taller, but has the shorter arms. And, there's a thought that maybe he's going to slide inside to guard for some of those reasons I've talked about over the past year on this channel. People want to, hype this up like it's a brand new thing. Like, oh, where was everyone talking about it? Now it goes to the Combine Senior Bowl measurements. It's a talking point. It's been a talking point the entire year. If you've been on this channel, it's been a talking point the entire year. You're probably sick of it, so we're not going to talk about it much more. But I think given what's on the board here, I think something on the offensive or defensive line, I don't know that it's absolutely going to be Mason Graham here. I think that is a good fit, but I think it absolutely could be an offensive lineman. And I'm going to go Armand Membu. Again, this is not necessarily just a tackle here. Membu could absolutely come in and play guard. And if you look at the Raiders' current offensive line, I know they're moving Jackson Powers-Johnson. You could absolutely look to upgrade at guard. Or if Colton Miller is not going to be there in long term, he could be a replacement for Colton Miller. He could potentially step in and play right tackle as he did at Mizzou. I think Membu is one of the better players available at this pick. I think gives you flexibility across the offensive line. We saw the Jets last year kind of take Olu Fashanu to be that tackle in waiting. I think Membu could be in that same type of realm here for the Raiders. They have a number of different ways they could go. I'm not absolutely convinced it's Membu here or Will Campbell or Mason Graham or anybody else. Not quite sure on the Raiders, given the way the board has fallen. It's very easy to mock them. Jeanty if he's available, or McMillan if he's available. But today I'm going to give them Armand Membu, and the Jets are on the clock at number 7, and I could see them going back-to-back here with offensive linemen. Will Campbell to the Jets, same type of deal of what we talked about with the Raiders. You can just bring in a better player here, and Campbell is your right tackle in this scenario, right? You'd maybe prefer Membu if you're the Jets, but Will Campbell's still good. I'm not in love with either of these two picks here. I just think it could happen given the way the board has fallen. Either of these teams could obviously consider Mason Graham as well, but he maybe isn't even the best interior defensive lineman in the class, with a guy like Walter Nolan having a higher pass rush upside. I'm not necessarily attached to either of these two picks. I just recognize the possibility. I know people complain about their teams taking offensive linemen in the first round, which I don't get because it's such an important part of an offense. If you can protect your quarterback, your offense through the air can thrive. If you can get bigger and better guys up front, especially these two guys that can really, really move at heavier weights, you can run the ball. So, there's a ton of different ways you can go about it where it makes sense to take an offensive lineman high. We just took Fashanu, and we took Vera Tucker in the first round. We did all these different things, right? It's because they're very good players that warrant these type of picks that can help your offense for the future. And this Jets offense is going to look weird under center. Justin Fields, new addition there. So I guess they're probably going to operate mostly from the gun, right? That's kind of how these modern offenses seem to go. But Will Campbell to play right tackle, potentially guard if there's an injury, right? But it's just, this is your right tackle of the future. You're going to slide him over. Penei Sewell, for example, played left tackle at Oregon, and there were some growing pains when he shifted over to right tackle with the Lions. I think that's worked out fairly well. And you look at Aaron Glenn coming over from Detroit. I know he's a defensive guy, not saying that that's why they would make this pick, but I think you could see similar type results. I think Sewell was on another level as a prospect compared to Will Campbell, but Campbell's really good, could slide in and play right tackle and really solidify that Jets offensive line. Panthers at number 8. I think it's a Georgia player at the end of the day, and I think it's probably going to be Jalen Walker. Super high character guy. His best football is likely ahead of him. He's a really, really good athlete that can make a real big difference off the edge. Now, there are a lot of guys that like Mykel Williams as well. I think he is in play. All these Georgia guys, Williams, Walker, Starks, they are high character guys, team leaders in the locker room, big work ethic, and really good athletes, big time potential. Walker's, of course, the best athlete of the three, and they all kind of play different positions, but Walker's going to be an edge in the NFL with flexibility to probably be a spot dropper or a spy. He's a really good player. And in this class, when you look at, okay, you're lacking a lot of blue chip guys, I think you lean on the other traits a little bit. And Walker's got a lot of boxes checked off. A little bit raw as a prospect. He's raw as a pass rusher for sure. Still learning to do that. But super, super high character all the way around. Work ethic, team leader. Everybody says this guy's an absolute alpha. And he's a really, really good athlete. So I think he checks off enough boxes to be this pick. North Carolina kid as well. So he's going back home here and will be the Panthers pick at number 8. I do feel pretty good about this one. I think if Walker gets to 8, he's a Panther. He could be gone at 5. That's a possibility. But Walker there at number 8. Maybe even could be gone by 4 if we're going to get crazy, but it'd be hard to see any higher than that, and that would be a little bit crazy. But we've seen crazy happen before. As we get to the Saints at 9, going to go Mason Graham. He could have gone anywhere really from 5 to, I mean, even you could make an argument for any of these teams inside the top 10, but goes here at number 9 to the New Orleans Saints. You just look at that IDL room. It could absolutely be upgraded long-term. I don't think this team's going to have much of an attachment to Brian Brzee long-term. I really don't. He's flashed. He's not been consistent enough, especially not against the run. And I know you can point to the sack numbers or PFF grades or whatever, but he's been a little bit disappointing as an actual player so far. And it's been disappointing because I was high on him as a prospect. I know he fell in that first round, and I thought, the Saints were getting a steal. I don't think he's really been a steal for the Saints so far, and I think it's somebody that absolutely could be upgraded. And you look at their new defense coming in under Brandon Staley. Could take an edge rusher for sure, but I think you really need 3 really good interior defensive linemen to run that 3-4 that Brandon Staley wants to run, and they don't really have 3 interior guys that I feel very good about, even if you like Brian Brzee. You now need another guy with that defense changing. So, and you can always have a healthy rotation. I just think Graham could fit with best player available and team need. Kind of seems like a no-brainer for the Saints at number 9. As we get to the Bears at 10, kind of a tough spot because I think you hope Jeanty falls to you. I got him off the board really, really early this time around. And then I think if he doesn't fall to you, you're hoping for Membu or Campbell. None of them are available. If Graham got there, that would, I think, be in consideration. But none of those players are here. So where do you pivot to? Could you go something on the O-line? I think you might. And Kelvin Banks Jr. ends up being the pick. I haven't had him this high in a while. I really haven't. But we're seeing a bit of a run on offensive linemen in this draft. And Banks, point blank, period, end of discussion, has a really good chance to be the best left tackle that you're seeing here. Has played left tackle at Texas, has done so, hook him by the way, has done so at a high level. No more Texas stuff in the background. I'm going to work on that, but he has a really good chance to stay at left tackle. He's got the size overall. Yes, there are some that are projecting a move inside to guard, but when you look at the Bears, you have fixed overall, you're hoping with trades and signings, Joe Thuney, Drew Dahlman, Jonah Jackson. You fix your interior. Right tackle is Darnell Wright, right? You go out in free agency. You bring in Dayo Dengbo to rush off the edge. You're not done there, but you've got 2 picks in the top 41 outside of this one. So I think you have 39 and 41. You could absolutely take a really good edge rusher there. I think there, unfortunately, is a non-zero chance. I say unfortunately because I really like the player. I think there's a non-zero chance James Pierce is available with one of those picks. And we were like, how is he available? I think there's a chance he's available. There are going to be some really good edge players available where you don't necessarily need to take one at 10. But Banks could be an upgrade long-term over Braxton Jones. And even so, it might just be a long-term upgrade. 6th offensive lineman to bring in here if there's an injury to any of your top 5. If you're saying Banks has guard flexibility, he could step in any of those spots or the tackle spots if there's an injury or if Braxton Jones isn't performing. So there are a lot of options here, and there are a lot of reasons why this pick, I think, does end up making a lot of sense. Kelvin Banks had a tough time with the Georgia edge rushers, but when your quarterback doesn't have any ability to extend and step up in the pocket even, I think it looks a little bit worse than maybe it actually was if you just checked a stat sheet. At number 11, going to go Walter Nolan. I've said it for a long time now, but he's got as much upside as any player in this draft. Former top recruit coming out. It was either 1 or 2, depending on where you look, 24/7 on 3, with Travis Hunter. Nolan has some very high prospect pedigree, led to kind of an up and down first couple of years at Texas A&M and a lot of potential that seemed like it was being wasted, but then a breakout year at Ole Miss after a transfer, and you saw each week, it looked like this guy got better. He's explosive as hell. There are some things to clean up, no question. I wish he was not on the ground as much as he is, but he's twitched up. He is crazy athletic. And if you look at interior defensive linemen that can actually get to the quarterback, but can still be 3-down players, those are the really, really valuable interior defensive linemen that get paid a lot, like a Chris Jones, like a Dexter Lawrence. Not saying Nolan's quite on that level, obviously, but a guy like Omar Norman-Lott down the board can really get after the QB. Not really a 3-down player. He's not good enough against the run, not big enough, right? And there are a lot of players like that in this class. Or there are a few. Ty Robinson's only like sub 290. Is it Pegues? I forget how to say his name. He maybe is a little bit bigger, but Arneas Peebles is who I'm thinking of. He's super tiny, and he's not really necessarily that 3-down type player. Nolan has the size and the ability against the run to show that he's a 3-down guy, unlike an Omar Norman-Lott, who's still a great player, but not going to be as valuable because he's not going to play every down. Nolan's got a chance to go high for that reason. He's a 3-down player with high pass rush upside and potential, and the Niners could use a huge boost here really to anywhere on the team, but they decided to go interior defensive line to bring up the Cowboys at 12. I really do think Amarion Hampton's in play, but I'm going to go with Texas Longhorn receiver Matthew Golden. Hook him. He stays in state here, and he's really been all over. This is a guy who went to the University of Houston, then west to Austin, and now north to Dallas area, or Arlington here in the case of the Cowboys. And there are reports he could be the first receiver off the board, and that's typically at this spot, 12, right, with the Cowboys. And you know, I got McMillan off the board pretty early just because I thought the fit was really good. McMillan could still be available at this point on draft night, but Golden could still be the pick here at 12 for the Cowboys. This is one of those that just seems to make way too much sense. And sometimes it's like, well, that's because it's a smokescreen and it doesn't actually happen. And it was too good to be true. But there are a lot of times where that just does end up being the pick. It just is what ends up happening, is kind of what I mean to say there. So Golden to Dallas, I feel pretty good about it at this point. And this is kind of the trouble that I work myself into a lot, is I think Tyler Warren goes earlier, but it's tough to find a landing spot. And I think in a world where I don't feel great about the Jets potentially taking an offensive lineman, this feels like a Tyler Warren spot. It does. The Giants had their Jeremy Shockey. Now the Jets go out and get one. I think that's a possibility at 7. But outside of that, I mean, you're thinking maybe the Saints could, maybe the Bears could even, but I highly doubt the Niners or Cowboys even consider a tight end. So a guy like Tyler Warren staying available, it's not like that weird. He's a really good player, but he plays kind of a less valuable position. It's a reason why a guy like Jahad Campbell, a guy like Malachi Starks, both the tight ends obviously are still available, but I really like them. It's just tough to find that spot as we get to the Dolphins at 13. And there are a number of different ways you could go. Jets also have been linked to Jahdae Barron, but I think you're reading into it a little bit much if you're saying, oh, well, Aaron Glenn was a corner, so he'll take a corner in his first draft. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. It could absolutely happen, but we got offensive linemen off the board here early, and that's not great for a team like the Dolphins that could use an upgrade there. And where do they pivot? I think it might be with Jahdae Barron. I really do. I think Warren's on the table, but Jahdae Barron is a really, really good player overall. Back-to-back Longhorns and 3 in the top 15. Somebody joked that said, oh, I'm going to fill up my first round with 32 Longhorns. But you know what? I'm getting a lot off the board here early with 3 in the top 13. Jahdae Barron, I think, is probably the best player of these 3, to be honest. I'm incredibly high on him as a player. He's my favorite Longhorn over the past 4 years that he was at Texas. And I don't think he's going to end up being a boundary corner. He's just too small. That's not to say that his instincts can't make up for it. I think they absolutely can. He's as instinctive and as knowledgeable as any player you're going to find in this draft. He's an incredible overall talent, and he ended up testing well. Like, you know, okay, maybe the closing speed looks a little bit better than it is because he's so instinctive. He always knows right where to be. but then he comes out and runs like 4.4. So I think he kind of alleviated some of those concerns around his athleticism with testing really, really well. And we know he's a high character, high work ethic, super intelligent guy. I think a team's going to fall in love with that, and it could be the Dolphins here at 13. Chris Greer gets his guy. You're losing Jalen Ramsey potentially. Corner is a huge need, and Barron comes in and fills that as we get to the Colts at 14. We talked about it a little bit earlier with the, is it too good to be true? I do think there's a good chance the Colts walk away on draft night with Tyler Warren. I think he's a really, really good player, and the Colts really could use a tight end. I think the big wild card for me is Colston Loveland in this draft. Where does he go? I think he's really, really good. I think his production was down because Michigan didn't have a quarterback. That's going to hurt if you're a receiver of any type. Where does Colston Loveland end up going? Because if you talk to people who are in the know or read articles or however you want to go about it, right? The top two tight ends, Warren and Loveland, are probably top 10 overall talents in this draft, with some even thinking, and some teams reported to have Loveland higher than Warren. Not that weird, right? Depending on what type of player you want. Warren's really good, though. I think there's a good chance he's the first off the board, and the Colts add a stud to their receiving room, which starts to look really, really good. Pierce as the deep speed, deep threat, field stretcher. Boom. Josh Downs to work underneath. That's awesome. Michael Pittman as the chain mover, your X, your kind of wide receiver one, right? And then Tyler Warren to just move around and fit in wherever. Obviously, you're thinking he's going to be an inline tight end at 6'6", 260, and his type of ability could be a little bit better against defensive ends in the run game, but overall, great player, and the fit at 14 to the Colts just seems obvious. As we get to the Falcons at 15. I think it ends up being a pass rusher. We've been saying that for a long time. It hasn't been the case. The Falcons sorely have been sorely missing any type of a pass rush over the past few years. They haven't had an individual player record, I think, 7 sacks in the last 5 years. Their sack leader over the past 5 years, I think, was Arnold Ebiketie, who had 6 last year. There were years where Deion Jones led the Falcons in sacks with like 4.5 or 4, and he's an off-ball linebacker. That's the type of production you've been lacking if you're Atlanta. There's more to pass rush than individual sacks, but overall, it's been lacking as a team, right? I like Arnold Ebiketie. Obviously, Judon was a good player, but I think you need to go out, and I think you need to acquire something good off the edge for the future. And if you look at the talent pool available, there are some really good edge rushers. It's just trying to decipher which one ends up going higher than the other. Because I really like Shamar Stewart. I think Mykal Williams has a ton of potential. Pierce may end up falling because of the character stuff, but is overall, a really nice player in my opinion. Even if he's just a rotational kind of DPR designated pass rusher at first. Ezaraku, I think, has some good pass rush potential. And then Mike Green, obviously, has a ton of juice off the edge, a little bit undersized overall, but has some off-the-field concerns. You can look into those. So it's really hard to determine where these guys are going to end up going. I'm going to keep him in state here. I'm going Mykal Williams at 15. He's got maybe an injury designation or two because he didn't do anything at the combine. He played banged up the entire season and then apparently was not at 100% at his pro day either. So you start to worry about his longevity, but again, high character guy. He's got overall, if you actually watch him, really good overall athleticism, could really get after the quarterback, and he was not at 100%. I think the player that Mykal Williams could become is one of the better edge rushers in the league if his development goes right. Big if. I know you could say that about anybody, right? But he's got the traits. He's got the size that NFL teams covet. Long arms. Why does a guy like Tyree Wilson go top 10 in the draft? Why does Trayvon Walker go number 1 overall? Teams see the vision, and they like the idea that they can develop these guys. You can't teach long arms. That can win in the trenches, right? And even if you were not exactly ecstatic about where they are as a player right now. And I'm not saying Michael Williams is not good, right? But even if, in any case, if you're not excited about where the player is right now, let's just make it easy to understand on a 1 to 10 scale. Let's say Mike Green is a 7 right now and Michael Williams is a 6. Mike Green might only get to a 7.5 over his career. It's just a hypothetical, right? But Williams might be able to get up to an 8.5 or a 9, right? So do you take the guy that you think is better right now or the guy that could be better if the development goes right in the future? And that's kind of where the Falcons go in this scenario, keeping Michael Williams in state. I know it's like they don't take Georgia players, but those are all the good players. I think it could just be weird, right? There just wasn't the right guy on the board for that team at the time. They keep Michael Williams in state this time around and upgrade their pass rush. Cardinals at 16. I think it's going to be something on the defensive line again. It could be something on the offensive line. I don't think guard is out of the question. I think you could even consider right tackle as well. I know they brought in Jonah Williams, right? But could consider something on the O-line. Simmons with the injury stuff is scary, and it's like, how high do you draft Gray Zabel when he's not a tackle? I know he continues to be listed at tackle on PFF. He is a guard or a center. He's never playing tackle unless there's an injury and he like fills in like Joe Tooney did at left tackle for Kansas City, right? But he's mostly not going to be a tackle in almost any scenario. I think D-line is intriguing, and I think you look at what the Cardinals need, I think interior defensive line stands out a little bit more. And when these players you could consider fairly close, it might just end up being, where you need guys a little bit more. And I think, yeah, you bring in Dalvin Tomlinson. Kenneth Grant still could be a really good fit here. Absolutely could be. It's interesting. I mean, the Cardinals here, you expect it to be something in the trenches almost certainly. It's just which route do they want to go? And I think I am leaning towards IDL. I'm going to go Kenneth Grant here. Again, another high upside guy. Really, really good athlete for his size. You got to remember, he's 340 pounds, right? Can get after the QB a little bit. Obviously a space eater in the run game. Monty Osenfort gets his guy at 16. Bengals at 17. It's obviously going to be defense here, right? Unless they don't have like a starting starting 2 guard combo right now. They've got 1, right? And that's a problem. And if you like, Gray Zabel enough, he might be the pick here at 17 to jump in and start at guard. Like, that's not weird. It's like probably going to be defense here, but I think guard is very much in play. I really do. And I think you could say the same thing about Seattle, although we just don't expect John Schneider, the GM of the Seahawks, to draft a guard. He just doesn't seem to value interior offensive line like that, but it's not to say that things can't change and the best player available for them happens to be an interior offensive lineman. It's not impossible. But yeah, anyway, Bengals here at 17. I like one of the safeties coming off the board at this spot, either Malachi Starks or Nick Eamon-Worry. And I really, really like Malachi Starks. And I'm gonna do it. It could absolutely be Nick Eamon-Worry here. Absolutely could be if they're gonna go safety. Just which type do you want? Do you want the box guy that can play that overhang role, or do you want the free safety? I have a classic free safety. He can play 2 high, can play single high. He's a good enough athlete. I think they try to get their Jesse Bates here, and they go Malachi Starks. If you think Dax Hill can be that guy of the future, maybe you don't, right? I love Dax Hill as a prospect, but I think injuries kind of hurt him, no pun intended, a little bit. Starks ends up being the pick there, and I really like the player. I think Eamon-Worry, of course, makes a lot of sense as we get to Seattle at 18. I feel like it's going to be something off the edge. A receiver may be in play as well. I don't think it's going to be interior offensive line. I don't. Absolutely could be, but I don't necessarily think so. Seattle at 18. Historically, they've preferred like the Shamar Stewart types. The big body, like 270-pound defensive ends with potential, with maybe lacking production. Shamar Stewart to Seattle here does just make a lot of sense to me. and you look at kind of the edge rushers they have in the room already, and the ones that are actually good are kind of the smaller guys. Like, I like Boye Mafe, right? And, I think you look at who would pair well with him. It's the 270-plus pound Shamar Stewart that has a ton of juice off the edge, that will be a good run defender. He's the pick here for me at 18. I don't absolutely love it, but I think Stewart could go a lot higher than this. But he's the 18th player off the board in this scenario. At 19, have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think their options are pretty awesome here. And it's really the top 3 on the PFF big board that stand out to me the most. Mike Green, if you want to go something off the edge. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is gone. I think people have misunderstood in some of my mocks when I bring him up, but I'm talking about some of the edge rushers they've had in the room. Shaq Barrett, right? Although JTS is gone, Barrett, I believe, is back on the roster. I'm fairly certain about that. But either way, he could not even make the team. Mike Green makes a ton of sense. The Bucs value production. They really do. He could be an impact player off the edge. Jahad Campbell is not only a replacement at linebacker right now, but also is your Levante David replacement long-term. There's a ton of value to that. I love Campbell as a player. I think he's great. Somebody in my comments was saying this guy's not a cover player. Have you watched him? He's shockingly good in coverage for a guy that was listed playing at 245 pounds. I know he came in to the combine 10 pounds lighter. He can rush off the edge. There's value to that, especially in a 3-4. Campbell's a stud. And then you also look at their secondary, and corner's a big need. And Will Johnson's here. Has a knee injury designation. Speed questions, short arm questions. Will Johnson's falling here for me, but is still, I think, a really good player. So you've got options. You've absolutely got options. Which direction do you go? I'm going to go Jahad Campbell. I think there's a chance he goes a lot higher than this. But if he's available at 19, I think the Bucs absolutely jump at that opportunity and bring Campbell into their room. He can learn behind Levante David, which is a great guy to learn from. Maybe not a Hall of Fame linebacker, but Hall of very good. Levante David has been a stud for 15 years or close to it in the NFL, which is nuts. He was, I'm looking at the year here on my calendar. He was drafted, I almost want to say like 2011. I mean, it felt like so long ago. And he's been so good for so long. Levante David is an absolute stud. And for someone that diagnoses and reads as well as Levante David does, that's where Jahad Campbell can improve. And I feel like it's just a match made in heaven. Jahad Campbell, you use his athleticism right now, be a chase player. Levante David kind of diagnoses, reads, and reacts. And then Campbell can hopefully pick up on some of that by just being in the same room with him and end up being that player long term, but can also offer some pass rush. Broncos at 20. I really like the idea of Amarion Hampton, so I'm going to do it. I think that Holston Loveland is very much in play. I know they brought in Evan Ingram. I don't think it matters all that much. It's a 2-year contract for an injury-prone player. I don't think there's any long-term type attachment there. But we're going to go Amarion Hampton. We know they want a running back. Hampton, again, seems like the obvious pick. Apparently, the Broncos have called about moving up. But who would they be moving up for, right? Maybe one of the top tight ends. Maybe Amarion Hampton, if you think a team like Dallas could take him at 12. And who else could consider a running back in this range? I mean, I guess a lot of these teams could, but it's also tough to say who would, because, like, the Niners have always had a rotation of guys, but they have the lead back clearly in McCaffrey, and I think the Cowboys could, but could just opt to wait and take a running back later. Dolphins have always loved that rotation here recently, at least, but they've got some guys that you probably wouldn't consider a running back at 13, obviously, right? So it's tough to say. The Cardinals drafted Trey Benson pretty high last year. The Bengals maybe could, but I think there are bigger needs than taking a running back at 17. So Hampton here goes at 20. So I'm like, who are the Broncos calling about, like, trading up for? I don't know. Steelers at 21. Man, this one gets tough because I think there's a real chance that Shedeur Sanders falls out of the first round. But if he's available at 21, I think the Steelers could pull the trigger. They do not really have a quarterback on the roster right now. That's a problem, right? They don't. So, I mean, okay, they do, but nobody good. So Shedeur Sanders can be your quarterback of the future. Team him up with Mike Tomlin and make his home in Pittsburgh. Shedeur is a good player, right? Is he a top 5 overall type of player? No, he's not. But neither is Cam Ward, in my opinion. And he goes at number 1 overall because he's a QB. And it's just not an amazing draft year. But you have a lot of teams that either have solved quarterback in other directions or decide to take a better player. And then that leaves Shedeur available at 21. He is a good player. He can be a serviceable quarterback of the future. And the Steelers take him at 21. Maybe didn't think he was going to be in play. Maybe would have opted for something on the D-line or a corner or a safety. There are some good ones available, right? But Sanders falls, and he is the pick for me here at 21. Chargers at 22. Just feels like chalk. But if Colston Loveland is available at 22, especially with a guy like Kenneth Grant off the board, the Michigan connection feels obvious. When you look at the Chargers' needs, they need receivers. And that's what Loveland is. He's not necessarily a traditional inline tight end, but can do that, but especially can thrive in the slot, especially can thrive as a receiver. And I think you can move him around and you can have a lot of success on offense. Harbaugh obviously is going to know this guy as well as anybody. And Colston Loveland ends up headed to the Chargers to team back up. I know I've had this, it's been chalk, but sometimes if it makes sense if it makes too much sense, you're overthinking it. Just do it, right? And that's what Loveland to the Chargers is for me. As we get to the Packers at 23. And it feels like the Packers probably will take an athletic edge rusher who is, projectable, someone that isn't a polished product but could be good long-term. Stewart's off the board. Williams is off the board. They need corner so badly, and Will Johnson has fallen. He's here. They stopped the Will Johnson fall. Will Johnson replaces Jair Alexander, or I don't expect Jair to be a Packer long-term at this point. I don't think anybody does, but Will Johnson adds another good corner to the room. Nate Hobbs can play in the slot. Will Johnson to the boundary. He is a good player. He's just really good, right? Sometimes we overthink it because of X, Y, and Z, but then you just come back to the main overarching point, which is that he's a good player. He goes here at 23. As we get to the Vikings at 24, a team I really do expect to trade back. I think it's IDL or safety here probably. Nicky Manwari does stand out. I think Derek Harmon also makes a lot of sense here. I do. I'm going to go Nicky Manwari. Really good, really athletic. You look at what the Vikings could need. An upgrade in the secondary makes a lot of sense, especially strong safety. Harrison Smith, not getting any younger. And has the ability, we've seen it before, to play free safety. Does his, I would say fading athleticism kind of hinder that ability? Maybe so. But Manwari is a good option for the future. He's an incredible athlete who is more than just an athlete. He's got great ball skills. He is a pick-six machine. And that doesn't necessarily mean this guy is over-aggressive, jumping everything, trying to make a play like we've seen with some corners over the years. A Marcus Peters or a Trayvon Diggs, right? Or, even at college, Emmanuel Forbes. Manwari is just a really good overall player, really, really good athlete, and I think the ball skills kind of take him up to another level as a prospect. We see 2 safeties go in the first round. As we get to the Texans at 25, and for me, it seems like it's going to be something on offense, right? Receiver, offensive line, all very much in play. Apparently, Blake Fisher's going to move over from right tackle to left tackle, and you're going to have Titus Howard stepping in at right tackle. So maybe tackle's not the move here, but maybe a guard like Gray Zabel could be. But receiver also seems like it would be very much in play. Teaming up Emeka Egbuka with his former quarterback. They've had some injuries. They've had some departures at receiver. That seems like it'd absolutely be something you very highly consider. And I don't know that Egbuka, he's not a first-round lock to me at all. I think Zabel's going to go first round. It just depends on what identity you want if you were the Texans. And I think I'm going to go interior offensive line. I'm going to go Tyler Booker over Gray Zabel. And I think if you look at the Texans, I think they're going to want to be a team that runs the ball. I think they struggled to protect CJ Stroud last year. That was obviously an issue. But Joe Mixon thrived. And if you can be a run-first offense here, Tyler Booker can absolutely help you do that. I'm not in love with him as a prospect, but if he goes to the right situation, a real power run-oriented team, which I think the Texans could be with Mixon, you could be looking at a really, really good offensive year for them. Booker here ends up being the pick. And I'm getting him back in the first round. I mean, he's been kind of all over the place this draft season, but I think he's got a chance to go round 1. Rams at 26. We got Mike Green still available, Josh Simmons. It's hard to pass up Simmons with this pick. It really is. I think he's a stud. I just worry about the injury stuff. And I mean, that's just kind of it. But Simmons here for 2 months, put up the best tackle tape in the country in this class, and then tore his patellar tendon. That's not good, but he is really, really good as a player. And even at his pro day, he was moving around looking pretty good, right? So there's not really a tell on when he's going to be back for sure and at 100%. And I think that works for a team like the Rams that have extended Jackson at left tackle, maybe losing Havenstein in the future. Simmons could also potentially jump in if there's an injury, obviously, but I think he could play guard. He's a really good athlete. Rams upgrade the O-line here for the future, try to continue to build around Matthew Stafford, and maybe take a tight end in round 2. Be interesting. Ravens at 27. They always get a stud to fall. How do they do it? They always do it. I'm liking DB for them, but with the available edge rushers, I like that direction as well. I really do. Of the available corners, nobody really stands out to me. I mean, Hairston, I think, is a possibility. Trey Amos, maybe, but I like edge here a little bit more. I'm going to go Mike Green, and I think the Lions probably don't love that, but Green is super athletic. And you know what? The Ravens actually drafted a Marshall player last year, Rasheen Ali. There you go. Anyway, Mike Green, stud pass rusher. Explosive as hell, twitched up, has some rush moves that he goes to pretty routinely. His ghost move is one of the best that I've seen. And for someone that can live in the backfield the way he does, I get really excited about that potential at the next level. The Ravens kind of always seem to catch a falling star, get a steal. If they don't trade down, they might like a player like Mike Green here at 27 and try to improve that pass rush. He's a really good fit in this defense as well. Lions at 28. Gray Zabel is very tempting to be someone that could play guard, right? Could be center of the future after Frank Ragnow. You got some options here. It's either that or Donovan Ezeraku for me. Ezeraku, really productive. We know the Lions value production. It's just which direction do we want to go? I'm thinking, I don't know. I'm going to go Donovan Ezeraku, and they address offensive line at a different time. Ezeraku, really, really productive. Long arms. He's athletic enough. Like, his agility testing was great. I don't know that he's super explosive, but super productive. I think it's definitely sneak into the first round. And for a team like the Lions, it's just a really great overall fit, in my opinion, with Green coming off the board. Commanders at 29. A bunch of different things to consider. I think edge is absolutely in play, and there are some good ones available. Just, I don't know that James Pierce ends up in the first round now. It feels like there are, personality questions more than like the character concerns, but teams don't always love that. And I think he's too good to be available at this point. Because I think he's probably a top 20 player in this draft, and he's here at 29 to a team that could use help off the edge. It's very tempting. It really is. The Commanders here, I really struggle with these final 4 teams. I really don't know exactly where they're going to go. And I do like these receivers as well as potential fits. I think you could see a Travion Henderson sneak into the first round with any of these teams. I'm going to go Gray Zabel. I think he will be a first-round pick. I think he offers flexibility across the offensive line. Again, if you need a tackle desperately, Zabel, I know he's a tackle at North Dakota State. He's got really, really short arms. If you think Will Campbell has short arms, go check out Gray Zabel. He's not going to be an NFL tackle. No chance. Again, if there's an injury, he at least has a lot of experience there. He'll be okay. But this is a future interior offensive line starter. And I think the Commanders could consider that long term, and they grab Gray Zabel here. At 30, you have the Buffalo Bills. I like something in the trenches. I do, whether that's interior defensive line or edge. I like one of the two, right? And I think Derek Harmon, I like him as a first-round pick. Really, I'd like James Pierce as a first-round pick, too. I'd hate to see him go to Philly. I'm going to go James Pierce Jr. here at 30. We know Joey Bosa is not likely to stay healthy long-term, right? Pierce, juice off the edge, all the same reasons, not that he's this level of player, but for all the same reasons that you loved Von Miller and wanted to bring him in, James Pierce. He's not Von Miller, right? And you don't see the production in the NFL, obviously, that you saw from Miller and wanted to bring him in. But Pierce is a really good athlete, a little bit undersized, can really get after the QB. Feels like going to be a good fit in Buffalo. At 31, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. Josh Connerly just sticking out. Feels like an obvious fit. They need to upgrade tackle long term really badly. Josh Connerly is a really good player. And I think it's kind of a no-brainer for Kansas City if he's available at 31. And we'll finish things out. These are the available players. I already know who I'm taking here. It's going to be Oregon interior defensive lineman Derek Harmon. Can really get after the QB. You look at the way Howie Roseman likes to draft in Philadelphia, and it is take the trenches. Offensive, defensive line. You lose a guy like Milton Williams, Derek Harmon can come in and fill that role, and you keep your strength a strength. You lose Josh Sweat. You lose Milton Williams. Harmon is a little bit of a replacement there. You have Nolan Smith working into a more regular role. I think Harmon makes a ton of sense for the Eagles as we have a lot of back-to-back schools being picked here. Back-to-back Longhorns, back-to-back Wolverines, back-to-back Ducks. Maybe that's a theme of the mock. But that is going to be it for the final mock draft Monday of the year. Final mock coming up Wednesday. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.